Here I am removing the harness from the engine so I can pull the engine off the cradle. What I'm doing here is disconnecting the transmission connector. The engine and transmission actually share the same harness because it's actually controlled by the powertrain. So I gotta get it all disconnected so I can separate the engine from the transmission off the cradle. Got the engine harness disconnected so I can move on to the next step of getting the engine out of the cradle. Went ahead and got the engine hoist rolled over so I can pull it off the cradle. What I'm doing here is using a pry bar so I can separate the engine and transmission from each other. They actually have guide plates on them, so you have to kind of give it a little wiggle to get it off. I got the engine hanging freely. Now I can start removing the flex plate and the oil pan so I can reseal. Here I am removing the flex plate from the engine. Now I'm removing the lower oil pan. These are actually a two-piece oil pan design. They got a lower sump and then the upper. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the lower so I can access the bolts on the inside of the upper pan so I can remove the upper pan. Here I am removing the upper oil pan bolts so I can go ahead and remove it from the engine. Got all the upper oil pan bolts out, so now I got it loose from the engine so I can start removing my rear main plate. Here I am removing my rear main plate bolts so I can replace the rear main seal. So you can see what I'm pointing at is an oil galley bolt. These also leak oil sometimes with just some thread sealer on them, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that and reseal that as well. You can see what I'm using is some brake cleaner. I'm going to go ahead and clean all the gasket surfaces so I can prep for new sealant. Here I am cleaning off the surfaces so I can prep for new sealant. After I got the surfaces clean from oil, now I'm going around with an abrasive wheel, going to clean up the surfaces as well. Here I am blow drying the engine, getting all liquids off of it so I can get a fresh seal. When I got my rear main plate installed, what I'm doing now is going to go ahead and tighten it down to specification. Cleaning off the gasket surface on the oil pan. This is the upper oil pan. Get that all nice and clean so then I can get a good seal on the engine. This is the lower oil pan. Go ahead and clean all the gasket surface off that as well, just to ensure a good seal. Here I'm pointing at the upper oil pan gasket that I just put on the oil pan. This is actually an RTV sealant. There is no actual paper or rubber gasket. It's all silicone. Went ahead and got the oil pan up on the engine. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it down. Here I am applying the silicone to the lower oil pan so I can bolt it to the upper oil pan. Tightening the lower oil pan to the upper oil pan.
Go ahead and put some thread lock on the flex plate bolts. Don't want them backing out, especially when it's located inside the transmission.
after the flex plate bolts that I put some thread locker on, I'm actually going to go ahead and tighten these up. These are really important to make sure they don't come loose, because this is what bolts the motor and transmission together and applies the rotation to the transmission.
Now that we got this motor all sealed up, new rear main seal installed, oil pan back on, lower oil pan back on, flex plate torqued down, everything's ready to be put back onto the cradle and bolt the motor and the transmission back together. So let's go ahead and get that done.
The engine now is secured to the cradle, so I can go ahead and tighten down all my bolts. What I'm doing here is I'm rotating the engine, because the flex plate, to bolt it to the transmission, there's about 8 little bolts that I have to put through the starter hole. So what I'm doing here is I'm rotating it so I can line up each hole individually. This is actually the hole that I was talking about where the starter bolts through, and I had to put the bolts through individually. This is what I'm using to tighten the bolts. I'll go around and I'll snug them down each individually tighter. I went ahead, got everything bolted up to the engine, got the harness back on, and now I'm going to go ahead and set it underneath the vehicle. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm kind of moving the cart back and forth. I have tape on the floor from when I originally pulled the engine and transmission out, and I'm just trying to get as close as possible so when I go back up, it goes in nice and easy. Now that I got the engine up into the vehicle, I'm able to put my cradle bolts in so everything can be secured to the body. You can see here I'm actually lowering the lift table, and I got the motor and transmission secured into the body. That's all we have for today's episode. Check out Rydell of Independence on social media platforms, and next week we'll have the engine running in our video.